Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to today, our Mother's Day special. Today, we have a panel of 5 mothers, a grandmother, and children sharing their experiences with us. They all have unique perspectives, but there's one thing that they all do have in common, and that's their love for Kenpo and their desire to be in service to others, as you'll hear shortly. But first, I want to go over just a few things. You may have noticed that we now have Facebook and Instagram sites that recognize and highlight women in Kenpo, and we owe a huge thanks to Denise Plowman, our media accounts manager, who had the inspiration and skill to set this up. And I think as of today, we have about 209 Facebook members, and we hope to keep growing. Our symposium since 2020 has consisted of Heather Flessing, Denise Plowman, and myself. But over the past few months, we've expanded to include 5 women as board members and ambassadors as a way to improve our outreach and service to others. So I'd like to introduce these wonderful ladies now. We have Adrienne Atkins. She's a 3rd-degree brown belt from Crystal Lake, Ohio. Other than Kenpo, she also is a certified recreational therapist specializing in mental health. We have Michelle Higgins, 1st-degree black belt from Tucson, Arizona. She is an associate director of societal impact, working with scholars of the University of Arizona, creating policies and procedures to benefit society. Jennifer Gibson, 1st-degree black belt from Costa Mesa, California. In fact, she just recently this year got her black belt, so big congratulations to Jennifer. She is an associate director. She is the professor of philosophy at Long Beach State University, and she also works part-time as a private investigator, so she does have some interesting stories that she can share, and that she shared with me. Rihanna Leppert, 2nd-degree black belt from Otis Orchards, Washington. She is a contracts monitor auditing providers who receive Medicaid funding to serve our aging and disabled population. And then we have Karina Salvo. She is a 6th-degree black belt from Buenos Aires, Argentina. She's been a police officer for 28 years. She's a boxing coach, sports instructor, and she also holds a degree in psychology. And I'd like to welcome all these new women to our team and thank them for their service to us. So before I introduce Heather, however, I would like to convey a sincere thank you to all who are here with us today and who support us through social media. And that includes the husbands and the men out there in the community who have supported us with enthusiasm and feedback. We truly appreciate your support. Heather Flessing. Heather is a 3rd-degree black belt from Bob White's Karate Studio in Costa Mesa, California, and has been a student of Kenpo since 2009. Heather is responsible for the beautiful flyers and the promotional videos that you've seen on Facebook, and she is our moderator. Heather is constantly in service to others, both on and off the mat. She holds a master's degree in both education and accountancy, and is a reading interventions teacher in Fullerton, and teaches accounting classes at Long Beach State University.
Thank you for that introduction, Barb. And I would like to go ahead and introduce our founder and leader for the Kenpo Women's Symposium, Barb White. And Barb began her martial arts journey in 1991 and is a 7th-degree black belt and co-owner of Bob White's Karate Studio in Costa Mesa, California. And then I'd also like to introduce one of our board members and our communications and social media account director and manager, Denise Plowman. And Denise is a 6th-degree black belt from Boise, Idaho, and she began her Kenpo training in 1994 and is part of the advanced Kenpo training system. And these 2 women are going to be working alongside with me to introduce our panelists and lead them in questions that we have for them, as well as ones that people have submitted already for us to ask them. So thank you, Denise, and thank you, Barb, for joining me and doing this exciting work here. I'm going to go ahead and go over what it is going to be like today so that you guys can see or know what to expect. So what we have is 5 panelists. They're all mothers or grandmothers, and they've been involved in Kenpo. Some of them are black belts. We also have our first brown belt joining us today. And we're going to go ahead and ask them questions. Now, as we do ask that you be thinking of maybe things you would like to know from them, either specific women or just in general that you'd like answered by one of our panelists. And at the end of the session, we will have a time for question and answers. So please send those in the chat so that we can ask those questions at the end. All right, we're going to go ahead and get going with our first panelist. So I'm going to welcome Denise Plowman back.
Thank you, Heather. I have the honor of introducing our first panelist, who is Antonia Mahoney. She's a second-degree black belt who started Kenpo in December of 1990, which for any American Kenpoist is the date that is etched in all of our minds. Just a few weeks after starting, Mr. Parker died, and American Kenpo karate entered a new phase. During this time, Antonia began a journey that would shape her life in the years to come. She was nearly 12 years old and had been heavily influenced by her older brother, James Rodriguez, who had obtained his purple belt before immigrating to New Zealand. Antonia started her martial arts journey with Mr. Graham Elliott at La Quinave Kenpo Karate Club in Jersey, Channel Islands, and she consumed karate like her life depended upon it. She traveled to Sweden in May of 1996 and obtained her black belt. She then stepped back from her training for a few years while concentrating on her professional career in accounting, but she always took part in training camps or special events to keep the connections and art alive. In 2004, she traveled to Ireland from Jersey to take part in the annual European training camp, which was held in Portumna, County Galway. Little did she know the trip was literally going to change her life. Antonia met her now husband at the camp and promptly moved to Ireland. In 2005, they left Ireland to travel around South America, New Zealand, and Australia. They plotted all of their trips around Kenpo schools, sometimes teaching, sometimes training, but always having the best fun with their extended Kenpo family. Antonia and her husband even ended up on the front page of a Sunday newspaper in Bolivia. From Bolivia to Argentina to Chile, they met lifelong friends and strengthened the bond they already had with Kenpo. In 2006, they returned to Ireland, engaged to be married, and they settled in the Midlands of Ireland, County Leitch. There was a local club in the nearest town, and the timing was right for them to take it over. In 2007, they started Portlaoise Kenpo Karate Club in its current form. Initially teaching in halls, they progressed to their own premises in 2009. And from that date to early 2021, Antonia and her husband had hundreds of students pass through their doors. Unfortunately, the COVID crisis hit them hard and they could not continue to hold on to their premises, which had been the home of their club. They handed back the keys and stripped their beloved dojo back to its concrete walls, storing all the equipment with another good friend of their club and fellow Kenpo brother. In September 2021, they started again. They went back to their humble beginnings of teaching in a hall, and many of their students returned. They now have 3 more budding Kenpoists with 2 daughters and a son, who we hope will continue their journey, even ever conscious of not to push them too hard. For Antonia, Kenpo has provided her with a quiet confidence, though maybe not so quiet sometimes, that she has carried through her life. At 43, she can say confidently that it has a part to play in every interaction she has with people in work and in her personal life. Her 3 children, Ellie, 11, Killian, 10, and Molly, 6, enjoy their Kenpo. As a junior blue belt, Ellie has taken part in many competitions in Ireland. She has been successful in forms and sparring and often helps to teach some of the younger members of the club, which works really well as they can relate to her so easily. Killian, a junior orange belt, enjoys the physical side of each class and not so much the forms. And Molly is just starting out as a white belt with a black stripe, and karate is just for fun for her at this stage. The challenge Antonia and her husband face is trying not to hold on to them to a higher standard just because they are their children. They do misbehave sometimes, and as daddy and mommy are their instructors, they do have to have the chat before they are after some of their training sessions. At this age, though, they try to keep the whole thing light while promoting the importance of being strong physically and mentally. As COVID restrictions subside, they hope kids' competitions open up, and they look forward to taking the children with them so they can experience that environment. So, Antonia, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, how have you managed to juggle your busy life with work, training, kids training, and managing a household?
Thanks, Denise, and apologies for that very long intro. But I'd like to just start first of all by saying that I'm absolutely honoured to be taking part in this symposium today, especially to highlight some of the successes and challenges facing women in Kenpo, and hopefully give the listeners ways that might work for them in navigating similar hurdles. As you say, you know, life can be very, very busy, and you've given some great context there in the intro, Denise. And just to kind of add a bit more, I suppose, is just to say, like, you know, obviously, yeah, married with 3 children, but I have a full-time career as well, which is, you know, can take up a lot of my time. You know, average week is kind of 50 odd hours a week. Now we only have the club for one night, because although the when we had our own premises, we were obviously a full-time studio, but which took a lot of work and a lot of effort from both my husband predominantly and myself. Now we just have the one night, which has helped that balance. I also train in CrossFit as well to kind of keep the strength and conditioning. So I try and do that 2-3 times a week. And then, of course, the children, as they get older, there's sports, there's music, there's school events, birthday parties, and family occasions. Just to add to that mix as well, my family live away, so I'm not originally from Ireland, but on a good side, I have inherited a wonderful Irish family through marriage, so they're hugely supportive. So I'm very lucky to have married into that family. Although I think they often look at me and think, I wish I'd just slow down a little bit. But I think for myself, one of the amazing plus points that I have is that, you know, my partner is into Kenpo. You know, I think sometimes it can be very hard to communicate and relay the importance of Kenpo in life. In fact, I would say that, you know, my husband Darren is, you know, much more involved in Kenpo than I am, really, on a day-to-day basis. But it's not just karate, it's other training, it's having a physical life and having you know, a partner that also has the same kind of goals as me. That really helps me juggle, because when there is conflicts of time and pressure and we're all running in different directions, you know, we can sit down together. He understands how important all the different aspects of the life are: family, work, training. And so we really try and work out those times when the calendars are clashing. And, you know, I feel like I'm privileged to be in that position, because I think if I was in a position where my partner didn't train karate, they might not necessarily get and understand the time that it needs to be dedicated. And it actually reminds me of a funny story of when myself and Darren got married, and, you know, we had obviously a good amount of Kenpo people, connections there at our wedding. And essentially there was a picture taken of all the women, funnily all the women, because they call themselves the Kenpo widows. And that was kind of, you know, that is how it is sometimes, you know, the other half is very much outside of it. So to be a couple, I think it really helps juggling that. Now, that's not to say, you know, people who are training, women who are training, you know, they can't have it all, because they can. I think it just, for me, it makes it a little bit easier. And I think obviously that is a challenge that, you know, other women may face when they come up against those time challenges in their everyday life, if their other partner isn't fully understanding. So, I mean, you know, all I can say there is keep talking. I think, like anything in a relationship, it's about talking and trying to find that balance. So in terms of how I juggle it, I suppose, you know, my career is, I'm an accountant by my profession, but I work in financial services, so it can be kind of very time critical sometimes. And for me, it's all about planning. Okay, so I'm an accountant. I like to plan. I like my lists, and I like everyone to know what the plan is. I suppose it sounds obvious, you know, we always hear these, you know, social media gurus talking about planning your meals and all this, but it really is, I think, my key tip. And from us and our family, you know, food is probably the biggest thing, you know. If we get the food right, food and sleep, then, you know we can get everything else working, because the nutrition's there, the body feels good, you feel like you can tackle the world, right? So in terms of the busy household, I mean, Darren used to be in the army, so he's retired from that now, and his career now is in the evenings, doing physical therapy. So that's why our schedules work. So during the day, he's around to do the, you know, the school runs, the household chores, and the things that need to be done during the day, and then we kind of switch, and I'm doing the evening sports trips and things like that. So the first part of the planning is, you know, your meal plan for the week. And from that, we write a list, and Darren will make sure that everything's in. So we both know at all times what we're eating for that day or that week. We swap it around sometimes, of course, but, you know, I think being really key, that is a really key success factor for our day-to-day life. To just add on to that, like where we live is in the Midlands of Ireland. It's about 20 minutes round trip to the nearest corner shop. So if you run out of milk, you can't just go next door or a couple of, you know, blocks down. You know, it's a get into the car in 20 minutes there and back. And if it's anything more than milk and bread, you know, you're talking 40-minute round trip to get that. So yeah, it really helps when your time is short. So I also find, like, as I get older, my body's just less tolerant to bad food, you know, so I can't perform at my best, be it training, as a mother, in my work, if I'm not eating well and sleeping well. So we do have bad food days and bad choices. I make them all the time, you know, but 80-90% of the time, you know, we're very conscious about what we're putting in our food, not just for ourselves, but also, you know, as role models for our children. And always trying to keep that mindset of, you know, we don't want to create an issue out of it, but we want to promote the benefits of, you know, good nutrition and good strength and mind, body, and spirit, so to speak, you know. So, like, I'm half Spanish as well, so maybe that's why I'm just so focused on food, but like, it's you know, so I mean, I suppose some of my top tips, I suppose for busy people, busy mums, is, you know, when you're planning that food, if you've got particular days that time is precious, you know, that's when you want to eat early, and maybe even before you're really hungry, and use your pre-cooked meals, you know, things like spaghetti bolognese, soups, stuff like that you can make in advance. And for me, eggs are like my savior. Ellie also loves eggs, so that's really handy. And shakes, porridge of banana, porridge of peanut butter, anything that you can take on the go, that's, you know, takes the stress out of it. That really, really helps. And, you know, if your kids are playing up and time's tight, nuggets and waffles are fine too, you know. So I just trying to keep the stress low, and getting from A to B, morning to night, with in the best possible way, you know. I kind of, as again, you know, I started having my children in my early 30s, and I'm 43 now. We'll be 43 this year. And I was neurotic at the beginning about they had to always have, you know, the best of everything in terms of food, you know. But I've actually realized they learn more, well, I feel they learn more from watching what we do than what they're actually eating at that particular time. And not all the time, right? So predominantly nutritious good food, but, you know, if they're watching us go through our life and eating well, looking after our bodies and things like that, that role model behavior is way more important than an argument over whether they will or won't eat their broccoli or carrots. And then the other planning I do is the breaks. I try and actually plan the breaks with the family, trips up the mountain, walking, out with the dog, you know, either on the bikes, walking, hiking, picnics, family activities that we can think of. And then, you know, for myself and Darren, a couple of nights out. In fact, we have one this evening after this symposium. And we try and get away for a night, away from everything, for at least once a quarter or once every 4 months. And those things help us juggle and help me mentally to enjoy all of it. So there's some of my tips in terms of plans and planning. In terms of training, as I said, I'm only training Kenpo at the moment 1 day a week, because that's where I am at the moment, and that's what I can commit, and that's okay. Like, I kind of, you come to the point as well where you're there was a time when I was training 4 or 5 times a week, and that's not where I am in my life right now, and that's okay. I'm still keeping my hand in, I'm still keeping my connections. In terms of my other training, strength and conditioning training, I'm a early doors type of person. So, I'm at 6:30 in the morning to the gym for a CrossFit class. And if I don't catch it, then pretty much I miss that training, because I can't fit it in the evenings. I might make a Friday night to make up a training session if I haven't made it during the week, but predominantly 6:30, that's my time, which is difficult. Again, that brings its own challenges. Again, as I get older, I find, I have a sedentary job. So if I train in the morning, I don't really have time for, a stretch or a walkout. And then I sit down on my bottom then for 10, 12 hours working day. That brings other challenges, so it's about trying to find that balance all the time, that yin and yang in your life. And making yourself get up, go downstairs to make a cup of tea, or go for a walk in my lunch hour when I get one. So it's quite structured, right? So, but I think some of the hardest things about all this planning is I can find it really hard to turn off sometimes. And I suppose that's a challenge for me that I need to work on more, and I try to be conscious of it. I have no problem, there's plenty of people telling me to do it. So I get reminded, and I think that's good. And I'll come back to that point in a little moment. Just briefly on my career, I would describe myself as very career focused. It's a great big part of who I am as well. And I changed jobs last year, which has been fantastic, but a challenge because I've gone into a new area. And I think back to the days when the kids were young and Darren was in the army working shift work and I was working full time. And I wonder how we did it, and for those women out there who have got young children in that space, just one day at a time, it is crazy. But you do get to the point where you're out of nappies, they're feeding themselves, they're dressing themselves, and it gets easier, and while you're going through that turmoil, speak to us, speak to other women, and it's hard, it's really hard, but every day they get older and it gets a little bit easier. And sometimes it's okay to have a good bloody cry because sometimes you just need to get it off your chest, So and another thing about my career, I suppose, and this was mentioned in the in Denise's intro there, where I talked, she talked about a quiet confidence. There's a lot of things that I was taught as a young Kenpoist by Mr. Elliott, that I've held throughout my life, had a bit of a upheaval when I was younger at home and things like that. And Mr. Elliott really gave me a grounding. There's phrases like, a path of action, and the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And then one of my favorites is establish your base and drill the basics. They all translate into the business world, and I've always led teams and led people in work. And I just find those things, going back to the basics in work, establish your base, establish where you're from, get the basics right, and everything else will fall in place. When you're trying to manage change, this whole idea of a path of action, a whole group of people going in one direction instead of people pulling in different ways, those kind of concepts have really helped me in work. So there is huge benefit. So what I try to do where my work is clashing with my Kenpo training is I try and go back to remembering how one is benefiting the other, and sometimes that can make that choice and those decisions a little bit easier, because we have to remember that, our work will take as much as we can give it and more. So I think learning to say no is really, really important. And I want to be in the club there to, be a role model for another fantastic woman black belt we have in our club, Davila, and also my 2 young ladies and son in the club as well, so that they the girls understand what they can achieve, and my son to know what the challenges are as a woman. So just finally, I want to say, it does all go wrong sometimes. So back in May 2020, and I'm sharing this with you because, I want other people to understand that it can look like everything's going okay on the surface, but like a duck, sometimes the legs are going underneath. So May 2020, I was sitting at work, having gone training in the morning, and I lost the power of speech. And then my sight started going funny. And I thought to myself, I'm having a stroke. And a very good friend of mine at work took me to the hospital. And by the time I got to the hospital, I couldn't remember my name. I spoke to my husband on the way to the hospital, and I said to him, something's happening here. And by the time I got to the hospital, I couldn't remember my name, couldn't work my phone, didn't know my address. And pretty much that's the last I remember. And they were quizzing Darren. By the time Darren got to the hospital, I didn't recognize him at all. I just didn't know who he was. And they were adamant that I was taking drugs. Then they thought I'd had a stroke. And they did a lumbar puncture on me. Apparently they had to hold me down because they had to knock me out in the end. But it was a hemiplegic migraine brought on by stress. So, which basically my head decided, that's it, I've had enough, So look, I came out of that and everything was fine. I gave a big scare to everybody, and, I carried on my life, but I got a big wake up call, and I realized, life is precious. I have to listen to my body. I need to listen to people around me who sometimes can see things that I can't. And I think as women, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And on a day-to-day, like we woke up in Ireland to Katie Taylor winning that boxing fight last night, and how they respected each other and they just did so well. They represented women in the best possible light. I think that's what I want to do now. I want to make sure that women are listened to, respected, represented, and understand how awesome they are. And they don't have to push themselves to 110% all the time. And it's okay sometimes to work at 80%. So I hope that's given some insight into how I juggle things and how my life is on a day-to-day basis and as a Kenpoist.
Thanks, Antonia. And now, Ellie, as you're sitting back there, we have a question for you. What is it like growing up in a Kenpo family?
Well, it's really fun because we all get ready together, and when we're getting ready together, it's like we have our own code talking to each other. And also when we go to karate, and when kids walk through the door, their belts are all over the place on top of each other and curled up. And there's one thing when you're in a Kenpo family is that you always know how to tie your belt. So you can do that for the kids. And also I get to teach the kids, which is a great opportunity because not a lot of kids my age get to teach. And I learn through the kids, and I learn through the instructors, and the kids say I'm better because I'm one of them basically. And also in the kids class, there's actually more girls than boys in the kids class, which is great. And we have this thing called Kenpo Camp, which happens every year, but since COVID, it hasn't been going on a lot. But this year it came back, and what it is people come all around the world to represent their Kenpo communities. And every day we do training all together with different instructors, and people come all around the world, and it's great because we're doing it again this year, which is great. And also I get extra lessons, which is cool. So but probably the best thing about growing up in a Kenpo family is that I feel like I live in one of the safest houses in Ireland, and that's what it's like to grow up in a Kenpo family.
Thank you, Antonia and Ellie. I now have the opportunity to introduce Jamie Hammonds. Jamie Hammonds began her martial arts training in 1994 when she was 3.5 years old. She started as a little dragon, earned a junior black belt when she was 11, and then earned her first degree black belt at 16. Jamie currently holds a 3rd degree black belt in Kenpo. She has been working side by side with her parents and brothers since she began teaching as a junior black belt. At the time, she was part of the junior leadership team, and now she is the program director at Aurora Martial Arts in Corvallis, Oregon. She's also a core instructor and is instrumental in the success of the junior Kenpo program. When Jamie's parents opened Aurora Martial Arts, training became a part of her life. She began training because of her dad. However, around the age of 8 or 9, she became a little bit more black belt focused, and training turned from something she had to do into something that she wanted to do. Jamie was constantly watching all of the students train and learning new things. The new techniques looked fun, and she made her want to train hard so she could learn those techniques. Jamie grew up at the Karate Academy and over time found a love for training and teaching. Her passion is the children's program. She loves working with young students, watching them grow and develop into some amazing martial artists and wonderful human beings. Seeing the joy and pride on their faces when they succeed is one of the things that keeps her motivated. Throughout her 27 years of martial arts, Jamie has always loved kicking and self-defense. During college, she developed an interest in talking about teaching self-defense for women. Her passion for this started when she gave a speech in one of her classes about the martial arts and how to run a successful school. After the speech and throughout the term, women would come up to her and ask her questions about personal safety and tips in certain scenarios. With this new direction, Jamie has spearheaded an effort in other women to offer women's self-defense courses at Aurora Martial Arts and through the local Parks and Rec department. She is a mama of 2 amazing little boys, Ethan 4 and Jensen 3, who are her pride and joy. The martial arts has made her more patient, disciplined, understanding, and active, which has helped her to be a better mom and wife. For her, watching her boys at the academy brings back so many memories, and she loves watching them try to copy all the students and what they're doing on the mat. Ethan was born November 17, 2017. He is a strong, independent, and loving boy. He has been part of martial arts from the time he was born, and he was born just an hour before a brown and black belt test. Mr. Sepulveda was the first person outside his family to hold him in the hospital. Ethan started his Kenpo journey in December of 2021 and became a fire-breathing little dragon. He loves being able to be on the mat during class with all the other students. He loves that his grandpa is his instructor, and he always looks proud when he puts on his uniform. Not only does he have a big smile on his face, but he gets to look like his awesome Uncle Louie. Jensen was born January 8th in 2019. He's a feisty, independent, strong, and passionate little boy. Although he's not quite old enough to join a class, he spends plenty of time watching. He has been known to do push-ups and stretching with the group, and more than a few times, his mom has had to chase him down because he wants to do bag work with the class. So Jamie, growing up as a Kenpo student at your dad's school, are there any experiences that you've had with your dad that you can now apply to your own kids as they begin training with you?
Thank you, Mrs. White. Two of the main core things that I did learn through my dad being my instructor and my dad was the patience he had through being an instructor to his kids, as well as, you know, when he's at home being the dad to his kids. That I do truly try very hard. I'm not as good as he was, but I try very hard to incorporate that into my life. I'm very patient with my kids that I teach. You know, they can be running around the floor and I'm like, okay, guys, make sure you're here. And I get them back and where they need to be, regardless with any kind of stress or any kind of, it's just very easy to get them, trying to get them back together. It's a lot easier than your kids being on the floor. And the first time I ever had to teach my son, I realized that my patience with my son is a lot different. I'm a lot more short with my son. And so that's something that I do try to incorporate into when I do have to teach Ethan, is that patience that my dad had with my brother and myself, not only at the karate school, but at home. he kind of carried that through, just, you know, through parenthood. And so that's definitely something I'd like to incorporate. The second thing is separating the instructor and being a parent. At the karate school, my dad was always Mr. D or Sir. At home, he was always Dad or Daddy or whatever. We called him that way. And so that's definitely something that I do incorporate in motherhood today is at the karate school, when they're on the floor, I'm Mrs. Jamie or I'm ma'am. And at home, I'm mom, mama. And when they do call me ma'am at home, you know, sometimes my 4-year-old does get a little snarky and say, yes, ma'am, when he's mad at me. And I do try to nip that in the butt as soon as I can, because I don't like it in the sense of I need that separation for myself. Just knowing karate school is the karate school and home is home. So those are the two things that I have kind of taken from my dad.
Thank you, Jamie. So you have another question. This one is, what advice do you have for new mothers who are getting into or back into Kenpo? And how do you organize your time to meet the needs of your training as well as of your family?
The advice I have for other mothers who are getting back into training is, one, just take your time. Don't rush back into it if that's not where your brain is at, because it's really hard getting your brain wrapped around rushing right back into your own training when your brain is on your babies. And so at first, that's definitely what I struggled with, in the sense of, you know, trying to get back in. My brother had just tested for his 5th degree black belt, and the last 2 black belt tests we've done together. And so I felt the need to rush back in and get back to it as fast as I can. And I wasn't able to do the best I could and to demonstrate the best I could, because my brain was not quite where it needed to be, wrapped around, you know, testing and everything. It was more towards, you know, my kiddos. And so my biggest advice would be, you know, take your time, do it at your own speed. You might not be the martial artist you once were, but that's because you got more attachments that make you even better than you were in the first place. So, and then with my own training, I'm still working on it. In all honesty, I'm having a hard time trying to find the motherhood teaching training balance. I'm trying. I'm working through things. You know, occasionally I will catch a private lesson with Mr. D here or there. But right now my brain is on motherhood and teaching at the karate school. So my training has kind of been put on the back burner. I'm trying to get back into it. I'm trying to, you know, slowly ease my way back in to my own training, and, you know, knowing it's okay to put me first sometimes, which is really hard for me. So, but no, my own training, it's a work in progress. It's slowly getting back on the tracks, but definitely got derailed for a little bit. So, no, but that's kind of where I am there. So.
Thanks, Jamie. So our next panelist is Vani Emerine. Vani was born and raised in Wellington, Colorado. She has one son, Chauncey Emerine, who was raised in the same small town. Chauncey earned his black belt in Kenpo karate under Master John Sepulveda and started a school in Wellington. In 2001, he became Vani's teacher and her Kenpo journey began. She tested for her black belt in 2009. In 2012, Vani's son married Jamie and moved to Cheyenne, Wyoming, where they started a family as well as a new school, the American Legacy Martial Arts, and they made room for Vani in their home. She has been blessed with 3 grandchildren, 2 girls and 1 boy, and wakes up every day to a full house of joy. Of course, as all martial arts families know, the kids have grown up on the mats. Bonnie worked full-time at a Pathways Hospice as the Patients Benefit Coordinator in Fort Collins, Colorado, and at night would help teach at American Legacy Martial Arts. In January of 2020, she retired and is now a full-time student and assistant teacher to Little Dragons, Kenpo Kids, Adults, and the Adaptive Abilities classes. Mr. Parker said, when one teaches, two will learn. And Bonnie says she is learning so much through each of her students. She's had the opportunity to meet and be instructed by Master John Sepulveda, Master Bob White, Mrs. Barb White, Sigon Stephen Labounty, Mr. Dave Kopic, Mr. Paul Dye, Mr. Ron Sanchez, and many other inspirational instructors over the years. Bonnie is a member and has participated in the Colorado Karate Association tournaments and was the sparring state champion in 2016. American Legacy Martial Arts has started new classes in the Team Rhino system for ground control, and she is excited to train and get her certificate in this area of martial arts. Bonnie would like to express her gratitude to all who have inspired her and graciously taught her in the martial arts journey, and to God for blessing her with her wonderful family, friends, and teachers. From the Little Dragons to the Masters of the Art, she is forever grateful. So welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you. I appreciate having the opportunity to be in this symposium today.
Great. So your question is, in reference to Kenpo and life, what is something your son has taught you? What is something your grandchildren have taught you? And what is something you have taught both your son and grandchildren?
Well, I want to start by a good foundation is important for balance and stability. So in Kenpo, stances give the foundation for balance and speed and strength. I have taught my grandchildren respect and the golden rule, to treat others the way that they would like to be treated, and to treat themselves with that same respect. This has given them the foundation for strength and balance, to have faith in themselves, and to know that they are supported to achieve whatever they want to become. I asked them what I've taught them, and I have some of their responses. Caden is 16 and he is working on his brown belt. When we work his techniques, he likes that I show him how to be self-correcting and on his form and in his footwork. He has learned to have faith and confidence in himself and to stay calm when things do not go according to plan. Molly is 11, going for her junior green belt. She says I have taught her respect and to cherish others, not to get mad for making mistakes, but to learn from them and to improve herself. Patience is a virtue, and she practices that every day. Claire is 10, going for her junior yellow belt. And I help her tweak her technique so she can be balanced and stronger. I have helped her with confidence in herself and to know that she is not alone, but supported in making decisions. Buffy, my son, expressed that I have taught him patience, that there are no shortcuts to achieve long-term goals. You must take all the steps that are required and just keep going. He remembers one night when he did not want to go to class, but I took him anyway, and that made him keep going and to conquer his dreams, and it taught him to persevere, that the low times of wanting to quit outweighed by the highs of his success. He has also learned that he has been given a gift of time, and all the time spent on the mats with me, he will always cherish. My grandchildren have taught me a lot. One thing is honesty. Children and elderly people are completely and brutally honest. Jotty Tension says you don't have to like the package that the gift is given to you in, but appreciate that someone has taken the time to give you feedback. Sometimes the honest answer is not what students or anyone wants to hear, but the ones who take the criticism constructively understand that we are wanting them to be better and to grow to become awesome in their art. They have all taught me a lot. The grandchildren have taught me that playing is necessary. It's not a hobby or training or exercise or sport, but actual playing. In hobbies and training, you are still coloring inside the lines. Playing, you get completely outside those lines, and it's just wonderful to do actual playing. Running until you are out of breath, or splashing in a pool, getting dirty, laughing until you're crying. That is exhilarating and freeing. Chauncey has taught me so much to believe in myself. I've never been very good at speaking, as you can tell, in front of people, but he has encouraged me to teach classes and to speak today. And I am learning from it and getting better. Also, if an opportunity shows itself, to take it. One of his favorite sayings is, never miss an opportunity that is given to you. There may not be another chance to meet and train with other teachers and leaders. He encourages his students to take all opportunities they can at other schools, or when he has teachers and coaches come in for seminars. He doesn't want them to miss out on any expansion of their training. He has also taught me not to worry. We have no control over the future, so you don't want to hang on to worry, just let it go. And I've learned to do that and just hand it over to God and let him deal with it. There's not enough time or words to adequately express my gratitude and love for my son, Chauncey, my daughter-in-law, Jamie, and my grandchildren, Caden, Molly, and Claire, for letting me share their home, our Kenpo journey together, and all the time that I get to spend with them. I am truly blessed every day. And I wish all of you and all of those attending a very happy Mother's Day. Thank you.
Bonnie, thank you so much for your wisdom and for sharing with us. Really, it's beautiful. At this time now, I'd like to introduce Aaliyah Whitecass. Aaliyah is a wife to Chris Cass, and together they are proud parents of 10-year-old twin girls, Bonnie and Ruby. She runs her own business as a hairstylist, is a PTA president at her children's school, and is a second-degree black belt in Kenpo. Her start in the Kenpo world was not by choice, but more by chance that she has grown to love and appreciate. She was born to Bob White and his then wife, her mother, Barbara Lee White. Both already had a reputation that she felt she had to live up to at a very early age. It caused her to push back in her involvement in karate, a pushback that she is now experiencing with her own kids. When Aaliyah reached her teens, she backed off and took a hiatus, and then she returned to the studio in her 20s. She is one of many who held on to a brown belt for years and finally tested for her black belt in her early 30s. Aaliyah has a lifetime of accomplishments in the industry. She competed in many tournaments for both sparring and kata and fought on stage at the IKC. She participated in the filming of The Karate Kid and Karate Kid 3. She was a guest on Romper Room and was in many demonstrations as a child. As an adult, she taught at Bob White's Karate Studio until she was 7 months pregnant. I can vouch for that. And eventually started her own studio, Fullerton Kenpo Karate, at the local YMCA. It would be short-lived, however, as parenting her kids and maintaining her sanity became her priority. So where is Aaliyah now? She works on techniques with her kids and hits pads on occasion at home. The balance of self-care and parenting has been a tough one. Her kids are 10 and reaching puberty, and they don't know it yet, but they will not have a choice to learn self-defense. Aaliyah is ready to fight that battle as she knows the importance of it. And then the generational struggle continues. I see that. So Aaliyah, you have a unique scenario in that you grew up in a karate studio owned by your mom and dad, and then left Kenpo to come back as an adult, earning your black belt. Your mom was a black belt, and now you are raising 2 girls in Kenpo. So the question for you is this: what influence did your mom leave to you that has impacted your own Kenpo training?
Thank you, Barb, and thank you to all the fellow panelists on here. It's so nice to get a chance to hear everyone's story, and I can relate to some. Jamie had mentioned with the kids and putting them on the back burner, or excuse me, putting karate on the back burner for the kids, which seems like that's all I do is put everything on the back burner for my kids, but they're worth it. With that being said, my mom's influence, it's often we think of our moms as only our moms and not individual women who have their own hopes and dreams and aspirations. I know that once I became a mom, I found a new respect for my mother, and it's unfortunate that she wasn't here for me to be able to share with her. When my mom started karate, I from what I heard, she was a timid, naive, shy teenager. And when she ended up enrolling, she was this fearless woman who was a force to be reckoned with. And, for my girls, for them to be given the same opportunity to get that confidence, to find that confidence, and I know growing up with it, I really took it for granted. So the influence that my mom, she was a tough little lady, and I want my kids to be tough little ladies. I think I've done a pretty good job in terms, at least I pretend to be tough. But I'm thrilled to get them in. I can already tell, even though I push, they have a wonderful time at the studio. I always did too. Every time I didn't want to take a class or didn't want to compete in a tournament, I would win, and it would be wonderful and it would be fun. And then the next weekend I would cry and complain about not wanting to compete in the tournament. It's this ongoing cycle. But I'm ready to do it for the kids, just overall for their confidence and them being these beautiful young women, and strong, more importantly, young women that I want them to be. Sorry, it's all over the place there.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Aaliyah. And I know you made a video that you would like us to show that demonstrates things that your daughters do while they are at the studio training. So I'm going to go ahead and play that. And before I do, though, I want to remind everyone, if you have any questions you'd like to ask our panelists, please go ahead and send those in the chat. I've got a couple so far, but I would always love to have more, because we want to answer your questions, things that you are interested in finding out from these ladies. So I'm going to go ahead and play that video at this time.
What was your favorite part of class? You look really good kicking. How did you like class? What was your favorite part about class? Do you like kicking? Do you like Skittles?
So our final panelist and our newest board member for the Kenpo Women's Symposium is Rhiannon Leppert. Rhiannon Leppert moved to Spokane, Washington a couple of months after high school graduation in 1998. She quickly learned that women were being attacked regularly on the walking trails near her apartment. So she decided to look for a self-defense school. She walked into Northwest Kenpo Karate to interview the owner, Mr. Chris Pantine. Rhiannon intended to interview several school owners of different styles before making a decision, but that wasn't necessary. After he shared with her the advantages of Kenpo, Mr. Pantine said, "I'm not the cheapest guy in town, but I'm worth every penny." Rhiannon wanted to find out for herself, so she signed up and was hooked from the very beginning. He was definitely worth every penny and every second of effort. Growing up, she was bullied relentlessly, and Mr. Pantine was instrumental in helping Rhiannon find her inner strength and self-confidence. She trained from 1999 until 2006, earning her third-degree brown belt. Her goal was to earn black belt, but when she and her husband had their first of 5 children in May of 2006, she ended up taking 15 years off for Kenpo. Over those 15 years, she thought often about Kenpo and missed the days of training, the friendships, and the challenge of martial arts. When her oldest child became a teenager, she knew it was time to revisit what brought her happiness, satisfaction, and a sense of accomplishment. She returned to Northwest Kenpo Karate under its current owner, Mr. Kurt Becker, in June of 2020. She was hesitant to put on her third-degree brown belt because it had been so long since she trained, but Mr. Becker assured her it was not only appropriate, but welcome. She started back at the very beginning with yellow belt techniques and worked hard to relearn all of the basics, techniques, sets, and forms. In October of 2021, after 16 months of training, she tested for her second-degree brown belt and was promoted. She says she is well on her way to preparing for her next test and is grateful to be back on this journey. Mr. Becker has been such a blessing and has helped her regain her confidence in the martial arts. He also speaks a plain and simple truth to her when she gets stuck on a form, a set, or a technique. Stop thinking and just do. Your body knows what to do. Northwest Kenpo Karate is small, and she is the only woman, but she feels respected and heard. As a mother, Rhiannon feels it is important to equip her children with skills and teach them healthy disciplines and structure. She also desires for them to have other great role models in their lives. Her 3 sons, now 12, 9, and 7, joined her when she returned to Kenpo. Her oldest daughter, now almost 16, just started Kenpo a couple months ago. Her youngest daughter, almost 5, attends a couple classes per month to begin learning the structure. And her husband is even beginning to show interest in starting. She loves that her children have embraced Kenpo, and she is truly excited for her daughters and the legacy they are already creating as future women in Kenpo. In her professional life, she works full-time as contracts monitor for aging and long-term care of Eastern Washington and has worked there nearly 12 years. She is also in a period of career transitioning, finishing her master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. She returned to school 2 years ago to obtain her master's because she has always felt called to be a counselor. Rhiannon's other hobbies include playing the trombone, clarinet, and piano, singing alto in her church choir, and doing triathlons on other races. She has completed the Coeur d'Alene half Ironman and countless sprint and Olympic distance triathlons and a variety of half marathons and other running races. She has also completed the 1.76 mile long bridge swim in Sandpoint, Idaho. She loves camping, kayaking, and reading a good book by the lake. Her children are her greatest accomplishment, and she feels lucky to be their mom. So welcome, Rhiannon.
Thank you.
You have your hands full there. So
I do.
Your question, where do you see yourself and your children in 5 years? And what do you want for your children through karate?
Well, I appreciate the introduction and appreciate the opportunity to be here. As it was mentioned in the bio in my intro, that when I walked into Northwest Kenpo Karate, I had very little self-esteem. I had very little self-confidence and a lot of fear because of the new environment I was in. I'd moved to Spokane for school and found myself in a much larger city, and just not really sure about the environment I was in. In that process, when I walked into Mr. Panting's school, I wanted to learn self-defense, and that was my number one goal: learn self-defense and make sure I could take care of myself. And when I so Mr. Panting, the pictures here, I just wanted to talk a little bit about him for a minute. He was absolutely instrumental in my development as a martial artist and as a Kenpoist. I was incredibly shy, and when I walked in there, he took me in under his wing and welcomed me right into the classes and the culture there. It was a life-changing decision for me that I made to join Kenpo Karate, and I'm grateful that I did all these years later. At one point in 2006, as it was mentioned, I took a 15-year break away from Kenpo when my husband and I had our first of our 5 kiddos. And over those years, I had lost touch with Mr. Panting. However, I saw, just by chance, I saw a profile picture on Facebook of a mutual friend of ours, and it was, it had Mr. Panting in the picture. And so I reached out to Rick, is his name, and I asked him if he would pass my number along to Mr. P, because I hadn't seen or talked to him in about 15 years. He did, and through that process, we reconnected and picked up right where we left off. Mr. Panting has left a lasting impression on me, and we were able to get together over the last year and a half to have lunch together and to visit. And you'll see in the middle picture there, it's a picture of myself with Mr. P and my daughter, Madeline, and then 2 pictures of Mr. P there on the left in uniform and on the right casually. I share these today because Mr. P, back at the beginning of April, suffered a stroke, and he ended up in the hospital, but ultimately did not survive, and he passed away on April 21st at Sacred Heart Medical Center. And so I appreciate being given just a minute to talk about him and just the impact that he's had on me and also on my daughter and my other kids. He was an incredible human being. He was an incredible mentor and friend. And I'm just grateful that I had that chance to reconnect with him over this last year and a half. So my goal when I started Kenpo Karate was to get to my black belt and continue beyond that. When I had my daughter in 2006, I stopped training at that point because life was crazy and hectic with just trying to balance. Okay, I think I got kicked out, but I'm back. So my goal was to get my black belt. And when I stopped training in 2006 to start and raise our family with my husband, I always had this, over 15 years, I had this longing to return back to Kenpo and to pick up where I left off. I'd gotten promoted to 3rd degree brown belt and then had to stop my training at that point. But over the years, I, of course, thought about Kenpo Karate all the time. I thought about the friends that I'd made and the connections that I'd made. And so I wanted to get back into that. During the pandemic, seemed like the perfect time to return to Kenpo Karate. And so I wanted to get back into it and move continue training and reach that goal of obtaining my black belt. Along with that, I also wanted to bring my 3 sons because it's important to me that they have discipline and structure outside of the home, and also have good solid role models in their lives as well outside of the home. And so they all started training with me, and we all just started together. I'm not sure why I keep getting kicked out. Anyway, we all just started at the very beginning with delayed sword, and I just focused on getting the foundations back underneath me and relearning all the basics, focusing on that, and just kind of keeping testing in my sights, but off in the distance, so I could get back to where I was. I was able to test last October for my 2nd degree brown belt and was promoted then. And so now I'm focusing on the 1st degree brown belt material, and still have my eye on obtaining my 1st degree black belt. I've been incredibly blessed in this process to also be able to have my daughter, Madeline, my oldest, join us as well. So she joined us in Kenpo a few months ago and is well on her way too. So as far as where I see myself and my kids in 5 years, I obviously, as a mother, I want my kids to be equipped with being able to protect themselves. In my bio, it was mentioned that I was bullied growing up, and that's something that I don't want my kids to ever have to deal with, and being unequipped in doing so. And so that was part of my motivation, bringing them to Kenpo with me, is being able to equip them and prepare them for any challenges that life throws at them, as well as the discipline aspect. So in 5 years, I, of course, want to be well past 1st degree black belt. But for my kiddos, I also hope that they'll stick with it and, learn the lessons that sometimes things get hard, life gets hard, but we can do hard things. And so sticking with it, obtaining their black belts as well, so they can feel that sense of accomplishment and enjoying the fruits of their labor and the hard work that they put into it.
Thank you. All right, Madeline, George, Rigdon, Franklin, you guys look a little ready to answer some questions back there. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the best thing about training with your mom?
Okay. The best thing about training with my mom is that, well, one, it's inspiring because my mom's so cool. She's in Kenpo, so we get to do it together. And 2, that it's comforting to know that my mom's there with me if I get stuck, so I don't feel embarrassed when she's there. Yeah.
Okay. One of the best things about being in Kenpo with my mom is I get to see how happy she gets whenever I promote, and it's also what Madeline said. It's comforting to be training with my mom because if I get stuck, she's there to help me.
What's the best thing?
The best thing that training with my mom is it's fun and she's there to help me learn. I'm not sure at all. I don't know.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We're going to turn it back to Heather then.
Right. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our question and answer time. And I have had some people submit questions. So we're going to go ahead and get those addressed to the people that were specifically asked. So our first question was for Vani. So Vani, with your son being your instructor, what was or is the biggest challenge that you have faced training and learning from him?
The biggest challenge is calling him Mr. Emerine, especially when I need him. I just want to yell Chauncey Lee. And I try to keep that separate so that the students know that I respect him on the mats and that they should respect him also. Hopefully they see if his mom's doing that, they'll do that. Other than that, he's the best teacher I could ever be under. So that's my most difficult.
Right, thank you very much, Bonnie. And let me go ahead and ask, you know what? I forgot we were going to do that, that speed round. So actually, let's go ahead and ask all the panelists to come back on. We're going to do that right now. Make sure we have enough time for all of our panelists to answer our question. So our question is, what's one last thought or piece of advice you would give to others about being a Kenpo mom? So have our panelists answer in a sentence or two. What is one last thought or piece of advice you would like to give others? So let's go ahead and start with Antonia.
So I would just say, be kind to yourself, be kind to those around you, and just, yeah, kindness at all junctures.
Right, thank you, Antonia. Jamie.
I would just say, try to remember that you have to be a priority to yourself as well as your children. And even though they're the bigger priority, you also have to take you into consideration as well.
Thank you, Jamie. Bonnie.
To have your students and your children make a goal to achieve a belt level that they can, and keep them going at that until they achieve it, and then they can move on.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Aaliyah.
I would just say to be able to manage the balance of motherhood and self-care is the biggest ongoing challenge for myself personally. So if you can get that early on, stick to it best you can.
All right, thank you very much, Aaliyah. And Rhiannon.
I echo all the same thoughts, but also just remember to allow your kiddos to go at their pace and not push them too far, too soon, or too fast. Let them grow at their own pace.
Thank you all very much. We can go ahead and continue with our question and answer time now. So Jamie, if you want to go ahead and stay on and have you answer the question, what recreational or leisure activities do you engage in outside of karate to de-stress and to relax?
Well, I got to get better at planning, those activities for myself, but I do like to crochet. I like to go on hikes with my kids and my husband. But I think the biggest thing I do right now is when it's time for, family movie night. My husband and boys pick whatever movie they want. And I make sure I have a crochet project available that I can just sit down and just enjoy my boys. And that right there kind of helps me unwind and relax and just be stress-free for, at least a little bit.
Right, thank you very much. I like to crochet too. It's a great de-stress from just the craziness of life anyway. Okay, we're going to go ahead and ask our next question. This one is for Rhiannon. When you decided to take a break, what steps did you take to make that decision?
When I took a break back in 2006, it wasn't an easy decision because I love Kenpo and I loved being there. But ultimately, I had to set some things on the back burner and just focus on being a mother, being a parent, and learning what it means to parent kids with my first one, and then having 5 more, or having 5 total. Just, it wasn't an easy decision at all, but ultimately my love of Kenpo is what also brought me back to Kenpo. So I guess the biggest thing is just, you know, if you feel like you need to take a break, give yourself some grace and allow that to happen, and just reevaluate where you're at and what you need.
Thank you, Rhiannon. All right, our next question is for Aaliyah. So while you were pregnant, how long did you train during your pregnancy?
Well, like I had mentioned, I taught until I was 7 months along, and I had my kids, I think, just a few weeks after, cutting it pretty close because they were preemies. And then I did take the first trimester off because I was so paranoid on being mom to twins. I definitely wanted to make sure I was doing everything I could. So that was my excuse to rest. But second trimester, I walked a lot. I taught, I think at the time I was teaching 2 nights a week. And of course, that's a lot easier to teach. I wasn't running around with the kids or anything, but my uniform just fit a little better actually as it expanded. My belt got smaller, but it was fine to stay on the mat. Thank you.
All right, that's good to hear. All right, so we have one final question that was submitted. If anybody else has any questions they want to submit, we do have just a couple minutes where we might be able to squeeze one more in. This question is for Antonia. Have you or your children ever felt that they or you needed to work harder toward the next belt because you are their instructor?
Well, I'm probably not a good barometer, because I took my black belt in 1996. 10 years later, I graded for my second degree in 2006, and I haven't graded since. So I definitely don't feel the pressure. I feel like I should grade more often as a, you know, for the club and as a representative, you know, of the instructors in the club. In terms of the children, how do you feel? Do you feel like there's more pressure on to grade?
No.
No. We like to push them, you know, and try and make sure they learn the material well. So we don't we push them to learn the material as opposed to for a particular date for a test. So, you know, maybe in the larger clubs there's set dates for testing, and then there's kind of more pressure. But I think for ourselves, in terms of the students anyway, we usually set the test date when people are ready, so it kind of takes away some of that stress for people. Yeah, so that's how I'd answer that one.
All right, thank you very much, Antonia. All right, we don't have any further questions that anyone submitted, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Barbara to give us some closing remarks.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you for, as usual, for your organization and moderating us. You just are such a professional. Anyway, for my closing remarks, I kind of changed it a little bit before I came because I wanted to, and it's kind of touching on what Antonia said. Last night, there was a historic moment in women's boxing. If you don't know already, 2 women, Katie Taylor from Ireland and Amanda Serrano from Puerto Rico, were the main events at Madison Square Gardens. And this morning, Denise posted a post-fight interview between the 2 women that sent a powerful message of mutual honor and respect for one another. And this is kind of keeping within what we want to do here. So I thought it would be worthwhile that I just give you a couple quotes from Amanda Serrano, because it's just really showed the way women are headed in the way we would like to. She said, "Women can fight, women can sell. We're trying to put women boxing up at the top, and all of us have to come together. We can't be against each other. Women have to support women. And as I said, this really sums up what we want to accomplish in the Women's Symposium. And it also kind of set up for a good segue, which I'm going to do right now, is that there should be a QR link on the screen that will take you to an online survey. And we ask, please, if you could take the time to fill it out and send it to us so that we can provide the best service possible. You know, your comments, your recommendations are so important to us. In fact, today's theme was the result of a suggestion. So please do that. Please feel free, visit our website, visit our Facebook site, and that will, you see that on the screen as well. And I once again want to thank all of you for joining us. Thank you to our wonderful group of panelists and children and all those who support us. We just so much appreciate you, and we hope to see you soon. And for now, I'd like to wish everybody a happy afternoon. Thank you.